unfinished high school stories and ideas tend to get put into a drawer and never see the light of the day. Well, I'm opening up that drawer and sharing them with people on the internet today. This is going to be embarrassing. Stick around after the slide. Hello, welcome to this video. This is going to be an embarrassing one, but I think it's going to be fun. I have here a stack of story ideas and starts that I did in high school, and hopefully this will be enjoyable for you. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. So this first one here, it's called Black Space. Year 2713. Earth uninhabitable due to pollution. Living in spaceship. Aliens invade spaceship. Turns people into zombies. Civilians, including me and my allies, have to convince cops into giving us weapons. Aliens afraid of light. Knocked out power when first arrived, but after 5 minutes, auxiliary generator turns on. Aliens eventually knock that out too. An end, spaceship crash lands on unknown planet. Keep audience guessing. So, that was some outlines for this whole story idea. There's more that I still have to get to, but in the end, landing on a unknown planet and keeping the audience guessing, I had series potential there. Let's get on with this outline. I think this is more outline for the chapter, I think. Lights flicker out, screeching noises first heard. Lights kick back in, puzzled thoughts. Lights go out and stay out. Try to assemble as many as possible. People die. Go to cops for weapons. Take cops dying to get some. Hold up in police station a while. Gets plans to go to control room and see where we are. Also thought we'll be safer on top floor. Goes through struggles and detours. Make it to top floor. Go through new struggles. Make it to control room. Tries to stop spaceship before crash landing. Slows it down, but doesn't stop it. Crash. Okay. That was just more outlining for the whole story. I have 2 separate sections of outlines for the whole story. But that's not all. We have the start of the story. Let's read it. Earth, a barren wasteland too trashed and polluted to be habited, is now a massive graveyard. Over hundreds of years, thousands and thousands of spaceships housing 10,000 people each were built in order to save the human race. Eventually, however, conditions became too rough and people became too sick to continue progress on more spaceships. The rest eventually died on that sphere of death we called Earth. Things were boring on the spaceships we knew as home. We lived seemingly meaningless lives and followed the same uneventful routines every day. But on August 23rd, 2710, on spaceship 2313, things would change. We would learn that we still value our lives. It started off as a normal day. I was on my way to eat lunch with some friends. And that's where it ends. I never continued the story, but you had the whole outline. You had the start of it, basically like a prologue-ish type of deal. And that was basically a very action-packed Alien. Pretty similar to Alien, but it seemed pretty fun. And next here we have a big one. Okay, so this is the story I started writing after I finished Breaking Dawn and was upset with the werewolves. They could have done so much better with the werewolves. So, I started this story. Let's start with the outline. Werewolf boy falls in love with a human. All other werewolves shun him. Alone, he is threatened to be killed by vampires. Andrew Strong, main werewolf. Abby White, girl he falls in love with. Daniel Saxton, main vampire, hates Andrew for liking Abby. Oh, like I said, this is going to be embarrassing. Alexander Williams, Daniel's number 2 man. Haley Saunders, Alexander's girlfriend. Alice Lovell, Haley's best friend. Anna Keys, friends with Haley and Alice. Alicia Zeller, vampire, joins Andrew. Preface. Go to first day of senior year, sees new students, goes home, goes back to school, talks to Abby and Adam. Adam invites Andrew to party, talks to Abby. Goes home early due to full moon, goes to bed. Has nightmare, werewolf experience. And that is the outline. As you are going to notice, a lot of my outlines were pretty bare, and then I would start the story. And then I would end up stopping at some point and never continuing. But this one here, we have quite a bit of pages. We'll see how interesting it is and if I read all these or not. But I do have preface chapter 1 and then preface awake. So I kind of started the preface in chapter 1 and then went ahead and did it again. So this is very early stages. I was not happy with the chapter, I guess, and started editing before I finished the whole book. And I'll read both and we'll see if it's interesting and I keep both or not. Let's just check it out. Preface. I walked up the stairs to my room after dinner. I sat at my desk, ready to read some more out of the book I had been getting into. Then I looked out the window, catching sight of the moon. Just as the clouds broke, it was shining ever so brightly, and it was obviously a full moon. My heart started to feel as if it were burning. The pain seemed to course through my blood and my veins, slowly filling my body. My teeth clenched together as my eyes started to burn, tinting my vision in red. I then jumped onto my desk and flung open my window forcefully and uncontrollingly. It felt as if I was a burning puppet on strings, only I didn't know who the marionette controlling me was. I jumped through the open window, landing easily on the ground below, and started running. It seemed like flames were burning me deeper as I began to grow. Soon I was covered in fur and felt like a hungry animal. Chapter 1. A brush of freezing wind swept over me and my eyes snapped open as I shivered. I stepped out of bed wearing nothing and walked towards the window, crossing my arms tightly against my bare chest. I pushed on the window until it clicked shut. Memories from last night flashed through my head like a slideshow. I shuddered at the thought. Shaking my head back and forth, I hoped the memories would just fly out of my head. Then I walked to my closet and grabbed some clothes. I pulled on the clothes quickly and headed for the kitchen for breakfast. When I got into the kitchen, I grabbed a bowl and a spoon. I set the bowl on the counter and tossed the spoon in it, making an awful clanking sound. As I went to grab a box of cereal, I heard my father, John, who was in the living room beside me, yawn. His chair creaked as he stood. I turned to see him standing in the doorway. And that's where that ended. I go a little bit further into that in the next one, but it'll be interesting to see what changed, I think. I do kind of like how my character went towards the mirror and it was like, oh man, you're going to get the typical very cliche, looks in the mirror and you see what they look like, and I went into no detail of what he looked like. It's pretty funny. But let's get into this because I have a lot more. Preface. I usually sat at my unkept desk in my dark, dull room, reading or writing. The desk was pushed up against the wall, facing the only window in the room. I set it in the middle of the wall you face after entering the room. The desk had papers in the top left corner with a couple books stacked on top. In the top right corner was a small book lamp with a shade that was the same dull off-white color as the walls. In between those were pencils and coins I always emptied from my pockets. Tonight was different. The full moon was out, and the chair by my desk was empty. The lamp was off, leaving the room even darker than usual. The covers on my bed, stationed in the back left corner of my room, were folded off to the left in a sloppy manner, the way I left them this morning. The cold winter breeze whistled into the empty room through the open window I had jumped out of. I was on the hunt. So, I actually think I like the first preface better. Maybe the first one is the edit. Maybe this was the original, and maybe I went back and then instead of naming the first chapter Awake, I named it Chapter 1. I am not sure yet, but I did like the preface in that one better. So let's continue and see if I liked what's in Chapter 1 better or not. Awake. All I could see was darkness. A brush of freezing wind swept over me and made my eyes snap open as I shivered. I stepped out of bed wearing nothing and walked towards the window, crossing my arms tightly against my bare chest. I pushed on the window until it clicked shut. I couldn't remember anything from last night. All I could remember was walking up the stairs to my room after dinner. I sat at my desk, ready to read some more out of the book I had been getting into. Then I saw the moon, shining ever so brightly. It was clearly a full moon. My heart started to feel as if it were burning. The pain seemed to course through the blood in my veins, slowly filling my body. My teeth clenched together as my eyes started to burn, tinting my vision in red. I then flung the window open forcefully and uncontrollingly. It felt as if I was a burning puppet on strings, only I didn't know who the puppeteer controlling me was. I jumped through the open window on the second floor, landing easily on the ground. Then I started running, and the flames seemed to burn deeper as I grew. Soon I was covered in fur, feeling like a hungry animal. I shuddered at the memory, shaking my head back and forth. I hoped the memory would fly out of my head. I walked towards the closet to get some clothes on, wondering if what I was wearing last night survived. I pulled the door open, grabbing the first set of clothes I saw, not looking at them to see if they even matched. I pulled the clothes on quickly and walked towards the door. I opened the door, already knowing where I was heading. My stomach growled hungrily as I went down the stairs. At the bottom of the steps, I took a left turn into the living room, not even paying attention to my dad sleeping on the recliner with the television on. I walked through the living room into the kitchen. I opened the cabinet to the left of the sink and grabbed a bowl. I set the bowl onto the countertop under the cabinet. Then I pulled open the drawer under the sink, grabbed a spoon, and tossed it into the bowl. As the spoon was clanking in the bowl, I headed for the pantry to grab some cereal. Then I heard my father John yawn and the chair creak as he stood. Oops, I thought, as I grabbed the box of cereal. I exited the pantry, walking towards my bowl, and saw John standing in the doorway in between the kitchen and living room. "Morning, Dad," I said. "Morning, Andrew." He yawned and looked at the box of cereal and then to the bowl on the counter. "Do you always have to be so loud when you're making breakfast?" He added and then smiled, shaking his head, trying to act disappointed. Wrinkles lined out of the corners of his eyes as he smiled, showing his teeth. They weren't white, but they weren't bad. They had a slight yellowish tint to them. He was balding with a half moon of hair around his head. "Sorry," I said. He just smiled in return, turning and heading back into the living room. He dropped into his chair, grabbed the television remote, and started flipping through channels. I returned to making cereal. I took my bowl of cereal into the living room and sat on the couch. John changed the channel every time commercials came on, so we never watched one whole thing. He didn't even return to some of the channels we were watching. "So," John said uncomfortably, He wasn't a big talker, and neither was I. First day of your senior year in 2 days, huh? You excited? Nope, I answered. But I have to admit, I'm glad it's my final year. You know there's a new family in town? John asked. No, I answered bluntly. I didn't. Yeah, the White family, he said. They came from New York. I'm not sure why, though. Yeah, I said. Why would they come to blank? I'm not going to dox myself. Blank, Ohio, was the little town in which I lived. There was not much to do outside going to the movies, or just out of town. I don't mind it, though, since I'm not much of a people person. I'd rather read and write than go to parties. The Whites have a daughter, John muttered. They also have a son. Their names are Abby and Adam. Abby is a junior, and Adam is a senior. Maybe you'll be friends. Yeah, maybe, I answered, getting up from the couch and placing my bowl into the sink. I'm going upstairs. And then we have the next chapter called Monday. The blaring alarm clock woke me at 6:30 a.m. I was not excited. School meant unnecessary interaction with people. Of course, I had friends and it'd be cool to see them every day, but I am not very keen on talking to people I don't know. Presentations are the worst. Talking to a whole group of people you don't know made me feel sick to think about it. I got up to get ready, a routine that was so familiar. I opened my closet and grabbed some clothes from after my shower. The bathroom was right next to my room. I went in, took my shower, and put on my clothes. I went up to the mirror. The first thing I noticed were my own eyes. The first thing anyone ever noticed. They were such light blue that they were almost white. People said they were like ice. I messed with my hair with my hands, letting the light brown hair stay shaggy. Then I brushed my teeth. So, I did get into the cliche looking into the mirror thing, and I will say there might be a little bit of self-insert in there. Don't look at my eyes. And definitely, there's definitely a lot of self-insert in this. I had, with the whole not talking to people stuff, yeah. This is definitely very much me so far. Let's continue. I walked down the stairs. I grabbed my keys off the hook by the door. I looked into the living room to see my father snoring on the couch. That man needs to start using his bed, I thought, and laughed to myself as I opened the door. I walked up to my car. It was a silver 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix. It wasn't too old and not too new, just right for the amount of tension from people. I unlocked the door and got in. I twisted the key in the ignition and was off to school. Abby White, I thought to myself. Wonder if she's pretty. I pulled into the parking lot. I read in the newspaper that I had study hall first period and I'd get the rest of my schedule there. I let out a sigh and then opened my door to head into the school. I walked into the school, not making any eye contact, avoiding interaction. I went up to the second floor and into the balcony, which is where we had our study halls. I chose a seat and sat in it. I turned my head towards the entrance to see the people who came in out of curiosity. Many people I had seen before, but didn't really know came in. A beautiful pale girl came in gracefully, glared at me, and sat far away. What's her problem? I thought. Then another familiar face came in. She was short, 5'5", maybe 5'6", but she was beautiful. Her chocolate brown hair swept to the left and was about 4 inches past her shoulders. She had smooth lips and round cheeks. Her eyes were a beautiful brown, almost matching her hair. Her eyes caught mine for a second, as she smiled, and my heart shuddered. I looked down to the floor as my heartbeat sped. By the time I gained the courage to look up again, she had already taken her seat about half the distance of the balcony away, but she was looking at me. I looked away, hoping she didn't notice my interest. As I looked away, I noticed the pale beauty staring at me with a half smile on her face. I felt my eyebrows pull in as I gave a confused look. She laughed and turned away. What is wrong with her? I wondered. Now that's aptly embarrassing and funny. I definitely would not randomly call people beauties in my stories. I might write a character that kind of says that jokingly or something, but most likely not. It's a little cringe, of course, but this was high school, and I am cringing internally. Hope you're having fun cringing with me. But that was my very much inspired by Twilight, but on the side of vampires, or on the side of werewolves. So you could tell the inspirations there. Let's check out this next one. This next one is actually a horror story idea. So let's get into this outline. Tyler Allen Smith has hallucinations of scary creatures. They become real and attack him. Starts as a kid having one of these hallucinations. Flashes forward to adulthood. Has a hallucination. Finds it very strange because he hasn't had one since he was a teen after seeing a psychologist. Starts having them more frequently and for longer periods of time. The creatures start inflicting pain. No one else sees the creatures and thinks he's crazy until they see the pain he receives. Tyler starts killing the creatures. Surprise end? Question mark. Tyler thinks he's killed all the creatures in his hallucinations, but one comes back and kills him, possibly a new creature. That is my surprise end? Question mark. That was maybe not the ending, but a possible ending. And then at the very bottom, I have a quote. When I was little, my mother told me it was just my imagination and that it would go away. It didn't go away. So that was something I wanted to have in the novel. And that's not all. I don't have only an outline with this one. Again, I have a little bit of a start. Let's check it out. I was frozen with fear as I stared at the creature that stood in front of me. A rabbit standing 3 feet tall on its hind legs as if it were human. It wore a menacing grin and bloodshot eyes, and its fur was matted and dirty. It tilted its head and gave a terrifying chuckle just before dissolving into the wind like grains of sand. Images like this continually haunted me throughout my childhood. Eventually, I went to see a psychologist that helped me see that these were mental images and I could control them. The images soon began to fade, and I could finally live a normal, fright-free life. Or so I thought. And that's it. That was the start of that story, and that seemed interesting, right? So you will see I had a sci-fi story at the beginning, a Twilight inspired story second, and then a horror story there. And now we have yet something else that's different. And this one is a fun one. Okay. This one I called Strong Willed Woke Up Super William. That's like Strong Willed would be the series, I think. And then Woke Up Super was also like a kind of like a tagline, and this was William's story. So this it might say in the outline, and if it doesn't, I will tell you more about it. So, outline. Man wakes after a near-death experience to find he has gained superpowers. Starts using them for good. Gets noticed by a group that calls themselves the Agency. The Agency wants to take this man and study him. The man doesn't want to become a lab rat and finds himself running from and fighting the Agency. So, this story idea was basically near-death experiences were the way to unlock your superpowers. Like, if you have a strong enough will, which is why it was strong-willed, to survive, you would unlock your brain's full potential, because humans don't use their full brain, and that is how you get your superpowers. And you might see similar things in my stories in the future. So I definitely had some seeds in some of these stories end up making it into stories later. But let's continue with this outline. I have more. William Bradley Armstrong gets shot 7 times from a burglar, 3 in the chest, 4 in his stomach. Doctors have no idea how he is alive when they find him, although he is unconscious. William wakes feeling fine, but somehow different. Senses seem heightened. Sees from afar, smells exactly what foods the doctors are bringing him on a tray. And that's where the outline ends. And I have a little bit to this one as well. Okay. I think I started... there's literally like a paragraph, and then I have a preface, chapter 1. I think a lot of the stuff I was reading had prefaces instead of prologues, and that's why I named them preface, but I think nowadays I would just call them a prologue. Maybe there was a bad stigma against prologues, but I think it's alright. Just, if you have a prologue, name it a prologue. Let's get into this story. Some people have a strong will to survive. In this case, William's will was so strong, and he tried so hard to stay alive, his brain had to start functioning at 100%. When that happened, he woke up to find himself having superpowers. So that's kind of could it just be a blurb for the book? But let's get into the preface now. The sound of shattering glass woke me from my dreamland. I jumped out of bed without hesitation or thought, ran towards the noise. Without thought, ... I should have thought of a way to protect myself, for what happened next would change my life forever. Chapter 1. I woke up in a hospital bed, feeling as if my body had been hit with a battering ram. What happened? I asked the doctor, checking in on me. Apparently you were shot 6 times, twice in the chest and 4 times in the stomach. I changed from my outline right there. He answered. As to how you're alive right now, I have no idea. You're very lucky, Mr. Armstrong. I thought back on last night's events. Images of the dark silhouetted figure that shot me flowed through my mind. I remembered the burning pain as I felt as the bullets penetrated my body. I shook my head, hoping the memories would fly out. I liked that imagery, I think. Shaking your head for the memories to fly out. It's in multiple stories, and it might also be in a story coming up. Let's continue. Things are looking fine, the doctor finally said. You should be out of here by noon. A nurse will be here shortly with your breakfast. And that was it. That's the start of Woke Up Super. I definitely had series potential with that one in my mind, because I had Woke Up Super : William, and I wanted to do the backstories of a bunch of different super people, and it would eventually culminate into a group. And yeah, it's just that could definitely be a graphic novel. I could see that being a comic very easily, but I was writing it as a story. So let's get into this next one, which is yet again a bit different. This one, I think, was also a bit inspired by Twilight. Maybe The Host, which I think I started reading and never finished. But let's get into this outline. Guy stargazing, sees meteor fall. Meteor is actually an alien spaceship. Guy runs when he sees the ship open. Dreams about the alien being a deadly creature. Goes to work as a news anchor. Prompter becomes strange symbols and no one knows. Dreams about reading the symbols aloud. More weird things happen. Alien eventually reveals herself and tells him why he could read the symbols and do all these weird things. He's half alien. She trained him in his sleep. His father, the alien, had a secret affair with a human. The alien warns him that other aliens don't approve of this behavior and he may be out to kill him. So, this dude ends up being half alien and is wanted dead by other aliens. Sounds interesting. Let's read the preface and chapter 1. Part of chapter 1. It doesn't finish, of course, like everything else. Preface. My eyes were glued to the sky as I watched the meteor shower. I had found a great open field just outside of the city I lived in, New York. The field was just far enough away that the city lights didn't outshine the beams of light shooting across the sky. Then, all of a sudden, one of the meteors seemed to be flying right at me. No way, I thought as I wiped my eyes, halfway expecting to wipe away the streak of flame with its sights set on me. But it didn't disappear. Panic started to rise in me as my stomach felt sick and my heartbeat raced. I wiped off the sweat that was beating up on my forehead. I was stunned, not sure what to do. Should I try and run, or accept my last seconds on Earth? Just as I was certain my final moments were here, the meteor veered right, just missing me. It made an earth-shaking crash about 150 yards behind me, accompanied by a loud metallic screech. That was no meteor, I thought as I held the palms of my hands to my ears in an attempt to dull the ringing. I jumped to my feet and turned towards the thing that had just nearly taken my life. My curiosity motivated me as I began to sprint alongside the trail of indented soil the metal sphere created. I stopped and bent over with my hands on my knees, panting, when I reached the strange object. A hiss of air made me jump as what apparently was the door to the aircraft began to open. A very pale, almost white hand with only 3 fingers and a thumb gripped the edge of the doorframe. I felt the panic return to me, overwhelming my sense of curiosity I once had. I no longer wanted to stay and see what creature was about to emerge from the smoke. I turned and made a straight path to my car. I jumped into my little silver Prius and thrust the key into the ignition. I started the engine, threw it into drive, and stomped on the gas pedal. Dirt began to fly as the wheels spun indentions into the ground. I didn't even look back as I sped to my apartment. Chapter 1. I was back in the field. How did I get here? I thought as I turned towards the falling UFO once more. I sprinted up to it again to see the doors hiss open. Something felt different this time. I had a real sense of fear at what would happen next. Giant claws gripped the door frame, this time instead of a hand from before. I stood there unmoving. The fear had me frozen. A horrifying snarl chilled me to the bone as the beast emerged from the smoke. It resembled a dog, only with no fur, all black skin, and a larger mouth with lots of sharp teeth. The beast walked on its hind legs and had a hunch on its back. Its red, cat-like eyes stared at me intently. Then the creature lunged for the kill. My body jerked awake. Just a dream, I said to myself in between hard breaths. Sitting there, I began to feel as if I was being watched. I looked fast to the left, fast right, and then all around the room, but there was nothing. It was just a dream, I told myself again, this time believing what I had seen last night was the dream. I looked at the clock, 6:25, only 5 minutes before my alarm goes off, so I decided to get up and get ready for work. I twisted the shower knob and let the water get warm. I hopped into the shower and started to wash up. The hissing of the water reminded me of the hissing of the door to the flying machine I saw. My ears began to ring, and I put my hands over them. I glanced at the door to the shower and thought I saw the alien's hand. I jumped and nearly fell, but the hand wasn't there. I let out a sigh of relief. I must have only imagined it. I pulled into my parking space at Studio 51. For WBNB News, where I worked as an anchor. I fumbled my keys as I pulled them from the ignition. I quickly got out of the car and made sure to look all around me before walking into the building. A sense of paranoia was flowing through me. I was afraid that if I turned around, the beast in my dreams would be there. And that is where that one stops. And that was a pretty interesting one. That beast in his dreams might also appear in things I'm writing now. So I'm seeing a bunch of seeds that were from my high school days that have popped up later. It's kind of cool to see, actually. Next, I have a couple of very short outlines, but let's see what they are. This one here, I had apparently named After the Rain, but then scratched out to change to Flicker. Bullet point 1. Urbanesque rainforest in which rain stops once every 2 weeks. Invisible monsters who camouflage flickers when touched. Constant rain causes camo to constantly flicker, giving the monsters nickname Flickers. And then I have a star on every 2 weeks, and it says time limit likely to change. So basically, this was just an idea of flicker monsters that are basically invisible, but you can see them in the rain. Very much Predator-esque, I guess. And that's as far as I got in that one. And this one's another interesting one because it is quite different. It is called The Little Robot. And let's see what it's about. Old man lives alone. Wife died. Never had a son. Builds a robot son. Robot son feels out of place. Only robot. Tries going for human girls. Gets really sad after being rejected. Old man sees robot's sadness and begins building a female robot in secret for a surprise. Old man gets sick and dies. Robot gets sad thinking it's all alone. Finds female robot schematics and finishes her. So this is very much kind of Frankenstein-esque, I guess, but with a little robot. And yeah, it's seems like a happier than Frankenstein, but also sad at the same time. And that would probably end up being like a shorter story, I guess. But as again, something very different. I have a lot of very different story ideas, as you can tell. And this next one is yet again something different. This is a Batman trilogy. I started to come up with this idea after watching the Christopher Nolan films and loving them so much, and then playing the Arkham games and loving them so much. It was after Arkham City. I was like so inspired to write my own Batman trilogy. And as you can see from all the things I've written before, I've never written like a screenplay, but this was very much film in mind, even though I didn't think it would ever actually get done. It was just basically for fun, and we'll look at it. So right here, my outline, I have main characters, heroes, Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, 1 through 3. So this is all the movies they appear in. Jim Gordon, 1 through 3. Alfred Pennyworth, 1 through 3. And then neutral characters, Selena Kyle, aka Catwoman, 1 through 3. Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, 1 through 3. It's very typical characters, I guess. You've definitely seen them in movies before, but we get to the villains now. And this is Thomas Elliot, aka Hush, 1 through 3. Jonathan Crane, aka Scarecrow, 2 through 3. Edward Nygma, aka Riddler, 1 through 2. Harley Quinn in 1. Killer Croc in 2. It's pretty interesting that I had all this kind of like planned. Scarecrow ended up being one of my favorite villains, maybe my favorite villain after the Arkham games. And I feel like the Nolan films, Batman Begins, did him well, but also way underutilized him. Like, I think he could have been a much bigger force, and it would have been awesome. I think they did really well with it, but I was hoping there would be more. So this was definitely in my plans. And let's actually get into this outline here. It's probably going to be very similar to like the actual origin stories. I probably wanted to change things up later and didn't get much changed, but we'll see what I have written down. Bruce and Thomas hang out as children playing Stratego. Thomas teaches Bruce to think like his opponent and use their abilities against them. Thomas mentions hating his parents and wishing he was alone with all their money. Thomas has a fascination with and always reads Aristotle to escape his home life. Thomas cuts the brake lines to his parents' car. Parents crash and his father dies, but mother is saved by Dr. Thomas Wayne. Thomas snaps and beats up another boy and ends up in a psych ward. Blames Bruce for his outburst, eventually released by an intern by the name of Jonathan Crane. So, I immediately did not follow my outline of Jonathan Crane only being in 2 and 3. But maybe that's like backstory stuff you don't see until movie 2 or 3. But that's all I have. I don't have anything else written. It was a cool idea in my head. I had a lot more in my head than what I had written down. But that is all my embarrassing high school story ideas that I could find. I definitely had more, but they are nowhere to be found. Maybe they were so bad that they just got thrown away or what. But I really wish I still had my very first short story that I wrote, because once I started writing in 5th grade, the first thing I wrote was basically a Dragon Ball fanfic, and that is the first thing I wrote to completion. And it was 12 pages, just a short story, basically a tournament style of, Dragon Ball and their tournaments. So I think it was called like Dragon Ball GTO or GTR or something. And it was basically just a grand tour. It was kind of a GT sequel, and I had never even seen GT. So I was writing a sequel to a story I've never even knew. But sadly, that story did not make it through a bunch of different moves. Somehow these ones did. They were in like a binder that didn't get thrown out. And I guess my very first story did not make it in that binder. And it's sad too, because I actually like cut cardboard to make my own hardcover, and like I drew the cover and back cover and pasted it onto the cardboard and had strings through the cardboard through the holes in the paper. And it was so cool, and I am so sad that I don't have it anymore. But that's my embarrassing story ideas from high school. Hope you had fun with this. I definitely felt some embarrassment with some of it, but I think there was actually some cool ideas in there, and maybe some of them will resurface in the future, or some of the seeds will just resurface in other stories. There's definitely some seeds that ended up into the series that I'm writing now, and I find that very interesting to see, because I did not even do that intentionally. It's just, I guess it's just stuff that's always been in my head. So hope you had fun with that, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't, and I would love to see you in here again. With that said, hope to see you in the next one. Bye. I walked up the stairs to my room now. So this next one is actually a horror story. I was frozen with fear as I stared. The alien worms.